Hey everyone, it's vmcampos, comic book fan. Welcome to another episode of the weekly vmcampos Comic Book Club. This is the series where I review a comic book, new or old, and rate it on the factors of the cover art, interior art, plot, and enjoyability of the book on a scale of 1 to 5. And then I tell you to get it or shred it. This week I'm reading Stranger Things and Dungeons & Dragons #1, published in 2020 by Dark Horse Comics and IDW. Now, spoiler alert, I will be going through the various pages of this comic book, but I will not be revealing the whole plot. You are therefore encouraged to check out your local comic shop and get a copy of the book for yourself to enjoy. Tell them VM Campos sent you. So, first off, a little background information as usual. This is one of the many Stranger Things comic books that have debuted since the Stranger Things Netflix show debuted. IDW has a partnership with Wizards of the Coast, who is the current owner of Dungeons & Dragons, as well as Magic the Gathering, and Dark Horse is publishing Stranger Things comics, so it's a match made in heaven. Everyone knows what the series is about. It takes place in the 80s. There's 4 friends. There's the Upside Down. There's 11. There's a whole world of 3 seasons of characters that is a pastiche of 80s tropes, and everyone loves it. Full disclosure, I loved Season 1. Season 2, I liked it less. And Season 3, I watched 2 episodes and gave up on it. So, this just goes to show you that my adage is I prefer the comics versus the movies or the TV shows, because when you read a comic book, you become part of the series. Where you watch a movie or watch a series, you're just very passive about it. Obviously, you do you enjoy what you enjoy, but comics is where it's at. So read the comics, watch the movie, watch the comics, watch the series, but it's always about the comics for me. Right, cover art. So first of all, I've got variant cover A by Anna Dittman. I love this cover, and all 4 issues of this series have this treatment where it's the character from the show, and it's also their Dungeons & Dragons character in this great painterly, realistic style. I just love these covers. I'm getting all of those variants. And a lot of the other covers also look really nice. They have some cool throwback styles, because again, Stranger Things is all about pastiche and a mishmash of false memories of what the 80s were. So this cover is a 5 out of 5. I love it. I love the photorealism of the characters. The very first issue has Will the Wise, aka Will Byers, and I like the juxtaposition of the character plus their Dungeons & Dragons character. Interior art is not in that same vein. It is by Diego Galindo as the line art, and colors by Misiayak, lettered by Nate Picos. So the interior art is good. I think the caricatures of the characters are good. They look like the characters from the show, and the environments look good. There's a great scene in the woods when the bullies show up, and the colors through the trees look nice, and it's on a technical level. The art is good. I'm not loving it. I'll give it a 4 out of 5. It's realistic with some aspects of cartooniness. Panel layout works fine. There's nothing that is amazingly over the top that really makes the comic book medium shine. There's superimposition of panels, and there's the succession of time given within these panels, and close-ups and medium shots. There's enough space for dialogue, balloons, and such. A couple vertical panels here and there. It's fine. It's serviceable. Obviously, it's a million times better than what I could do, but I guess it's a 4 out of 5, the interior art. Written by Jody Houser and Jim Zub. Jody Houser has worked on a lot of the Stranger Things comics for Dark Horse, and we've also got Jim Zub working on this one. I believe he worked on the Samurai Jack series recently. Not really recently, in the last 5 years, but what is time? So the story's cool. It's a prequel to Season 1. At this point, they haven't met Dustin yet. It's the 3 main characters, Will, Mike, and Lucas. And they get introduced to this brand new cool game called Dungeons & Dragons by one of the nerdy instructors, or what is he, a bookstore owner or whatever he is. So they start playing Dungeons and Dragons. They've got the bullies to deal with that we see in the series. And then at a certain point, they meet Dustin because he overhears them talking about that a role is not impossible, just improbable, and they become fast friends. So what's interesting also about the story is the characters are talking to each other, but there's also a narrator. There's no narrator in the series, of course, but there is a narrator in the comic book. So that's kind of interesting. It just gives you a different perspective. I'm not sure how I fully feel about that. There was no narrator in the TV show, but there is one here that sort of pops in here and there, even though I don't think it needs it. Do we need this over exposition? Although some of the exposition that we get is nice about as the friends learn this new game, their bond, the friendship becomes stronger. And what they learn in the game, they can apply to the real world. That's kind of interesting. So I like that it's a prequel. I like this where we meet Dustin. He becomes part of the team. This is all completely before the original series, so it also doesn't feel like it has any of the supernatural aspect yet of what the series has. It's completely a real-world adventure. So how would you like that as a fan of the show? Because the show mixes 80s tropes, horror movies, Goonies-style action, that sort of thing, with relatable kids that curse. But the supernatural, I think, is the biggest aspect of what makes Stranger Things click with audiences. And there's no, in issue number 1 at least, there's no supernatural aspect. Possibly in the next issues there will be, but in the beginning here there isn't. So I'll give that a 4 out of 5 so far for the plot. The enjoyability, I enjoyed it. It was pretty cool overall to see this origin story, to mix the art of the characters of the real world with their Dungeons and Dragons sort of counterpart of things. They're battling a beholder at one point and such. Here's a fun thing. At a certain point, the friends are all together, and Lucas and Will have a comic book in their possession. Now, it's kind of odd that they both have the exact same comic book. What would be realistic is that each one has a different issue. But what's funny about what comic book they are holding, it is an issue of Dark Horse Presents. And I had to look it up. Based on the tiny sketch that I see in the story, it is actually Dark Horse Presents number 20. The colors are a little bit off in what the original is, but this was the 2nd year anniversary, a big 64-page giant of Dark Horse celebrating 2 years of that series going on. Dark Horse Presents was the first series from Dark Horse, and as I said, Dark Horse is co-publishing this series. Now, unfortunately, there is a huge anachronism. This story is taking place in the continuity of 1981. That issue of Dark Horse Presents didn't debut until 1988, August. This is 7 years wrong. Anyway, what's in the comic is a flaming carrot story, an early appearance of The Mask, Paul Chadwick's Concrete. So Dark Horse Presents was a cool anthology series that gave a lot of starts to many independent comic book creators. So I thought they did a cool little nod right there, although it is wrong. Dark Horse Comics did not exist in the original timeline of 1981, which of course we can forgive if we say that this is not the real world, this is a fantasy world. There might be anachronisms here and there, but I like to kind of see that behind the scenes stuff once in a while. And so, should you get it or shred it? Get it if you're a Stranger Things fan. The Dungeons and Dragons aspect, I think, is a little low, although there is a cool part at the end where we actually have the official stat sheet of Will the Wise, so that's kind of cool in the old, I don't know what that is, 2nd edition Dungeons and Dragons, and a spot for you to have your own character sheet. So if you're a fan of the properties, get them, get it. For myself, well, I'm loving the covers more than the actual comic, the story and such, but you do you. And so that was this week's review. What did you think? Did you read this yourself as well? Have you read any other Stranger Things comics? I know you love the series, but what about the comics? So tell me about it in the comments. What did you think of my review? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Consider heading over to the Patreon, patreon.com/vmcampos. If you pledge there, you get exclusive access to a variety of things, as well as pledge tiers. I would totally appreciate it if you do, or simply follow for free to be alerted to everything that I do. And so this week I read Stranger Things and Dungeons & Dragons #1, published in 2020 by Dark Horse and IDW. This has been the weekly VM Campos Comic Book Club, and I'll see you next week.